justice.
Hello, welcome to Payne In Politics. It's a great opportunity for me to get a chance to meet you guys. One of the purposes of this is so that we get a chance to know a little bit more about our local elected and selected officials. This is not an endorsement of any particular candidate nor of any particular party. It's an opportunity to get to know the best of our people. I'm joined today by our Sheriff, Zena Stephens. I want to welcome you, and let's just get started. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
I'm Zena Stephens. I'm the Sheriff of Jefferson County. I'm homegrown. I decided to run for sheriff because I had a vested interest in making a difference in this community. After spending 30 years, building a very well-established law enforcement career, I thought I had a skill set to make a difference. So I ran for sheriff, and I'm getting ready to run for my second term.
What makes you qualified to be our sheriff?
Well, first of all, sheriffs are state constitutional positions. That's a little bit different than other county elected officials who are under the authority of Commissioner's Court. My authority comes from the state of Texas, the constitutional. And so I have legislative statutes that I have to abide by. In addition to, our office is funded by taxpayers of Jefferson County, but, we are responsible for state laws, county laws, and even some of the ordinances that are established by Commissioner's Court or some of the precincts.
Well, as we do this segment, what we're trying to focus on is the position, the purpose, and then finally we want to deal with the power. When we talk about the position, who would be kind of your bosses, for lack of a better word?
So, because my position is a constitutional position, I have no boss. The state constitution is my boss. And so again, my authority doesn't come from the Commissioner's Court. They have authority or jurisdiction over my budget because it's county taxpayer dollars. Once they approve my budget though, because it's taxpayer dollars, they have no authority over that. And so sheriff's departments, as many people call it, are actually sheriff's offices. And the reason it's an office, unlike every other department in county government, is I don't have to answer to anyone in county government. And so in sheriff's offices, unlike local municipal police departments, I have correctional officers who manage and work at our correctional facility, the jail. Police departments don't have that responsibility. I also have the responsibility by statute of securing the courthouse. And so I have to provide security for all of the district judges. And so I have bailiffs, and most of those folks come from a correctional background but have gotten their peace officer's license. As the sheriff, my jurisdiction is 975 square miles. And so my guys, contrary to popular belief, I can arrest you on any city within Jefferson County. I can cite you for any traffic violation within Jefferson County. Local police departments don't have that authority. They can only enforce laws in the municipal jurisdictions that they work in. So if you got stopped by Beaumont PD, their jurisdiction is just in Beaumont PD for Class Cs. If it's a felony, they have, all felonies, police officers have the authority to do that. But our jurisdiction, if you work for me, if you work for the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department, is 975 square miles. So that would be all the way to the beach, all the way going west to Chambers County. If you go towards Sour Lake in that area, once you get to Sour Lake, Hardin County is where the boundary ends. And of course, Port Arthur, Needle, and everything within those boundaries of the 975 square miles, I can arrest. And we even patrol the waterways.
If I get arrested in Beaumont, God forbid, or in Beaumont or Port Arthur, I don't necessarily go to a Beaumont jail or a Port Arthur jail. Is that fair?
That's not only fair, no municipality here has a jail. So everyone who gets arrested in Jefferson County from any municipal police department goes to Jefferson County Jail. We operate a 1,300 bed jail, correctional facility on Highway 69. Most people see it, if you're trafficking between Beaumont and Port Arthur, it's on Highway 69. So we house people, for simple crimes, something as simple as a Class C misdemeanor traffic offense, to something as serious as capital murder.
So no matter where I get picked up in Jefferson County, if I'm actually going to jail, I'm going to have to deal with your office.
You're going to have to deal with my office.
You know, when I think about the sheriff growing up, I think about someone with the cowboy hat, the big badge, and 2 guns on the side. That doesn't sound a whole lot of what you're doing. It seems more almost as an administrative position.
This is very much an administrative position. It's a business. We generate lots of revenue for the county in terms of leasing our jail out downtown. You know, it produces probably close to $300,000 a year just on the lease. I also feed those inmates and I charge them from my jail downtown, and so that's another avenue that we're generating revenue for the county.
Wait, stop for a moment, because that one kind of blew me.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a budget that you're receiving approval from through the county commissioners, but your office itself creates its own revenue stream.
Yes.
Okay, give me, beyond what you've just described, some other examples where your office actually generates revenue for the county.
Probably the most significant would be our commissary. So for every inmate that we have in our jail, if you ever come to a correctional facility, it's a city, okay? And so they don't like the food necessarily that we contract with to serve them. And so because of that, we can supply them with just general hygiene products, food, combs, brushes, toothbrushes, toothpaste. And so that generates probably, since I became sheriff, the revenue stream from that is 600% more than it was before I came sheriff. I've been able to use some of that money to repair the jail. That money can only be used to benefit the inmates. And so for infrastructure, for programs, they're also able, since I became sheriff, I've provided some technology there. And so we have now, they can buy phone cards. Their folks can, come to our site or go online and buy them commissary products rather than, come in and put money on their books. They can go online and search and see what they need.
You mentioned earlier that you're running for office again, or re-election. To get this position, you actually have to run either as a Republican or a Democrat. Mm-hmm. And at some point, you have to be selected or elected by the body as a whole. This last election, as I appreciate, you were successful in Jefferson County when the Republican controlled the presidential race. How do you think that occurred in your particular race?
First of all, I grew up in this community, and I didn't just grow up around Democrats or Republicans. I didn't just grow up around black people or white people, and so I think having the ability to just communicate with people knowing you, touch people, being able to disagree with people politically, but at the same time, listening to what they're saying and appreciating it. I think that's important. And I think that, personally, I think that sheriff's races should be nonpartisan, because I'm very conservative on some issues and very liberal on other issues. I think when you look at judges' races, sheriff's races, my job is to enforce the legislation that has already passed. I'm not a policymaker. And so, that's my job, to be fair, to make sure that even people in jail get their day in court. And so what I tell our corrections officers, it is not our job to judge them, to beat people up who are in jail. It is our job to protect them and make sure that they get their day in court.
Well, you bring that up because I guess we're kind of shifting to the purpose of your position itself. Mm-hmm. As sheriff, you don't enact policy. You just basically carry out what the policy is.
Absolutely.
How do you ensure that the people who work for you also create that same atmosphere and they don't try to create their own laws and their own policy? That can be problematic, and I've had that occur. And so I walk through that correctional facility 3 or 4 times a week as my schedule allows. And so I'm busy. I spend a lot of time at the correctional facility, and so it's not for me, I think it's important for me to be there, because I think that any agency is only going to be as good as its leader. And so when I find folks, and when you have as many people as I do working for me, there are going to be some bad apples.
And so when I find those bad apples, we have a disciplinary process that they go through. Under my leadership, I have developed a disciplinary process with the approval of the union. I went to the union and said, okay, I want to, we already had a disciplinary review board. I want to put some civilians on it. And so I got them to agree to have civilians from the outside, who I choose, to sit on that in an effort to be transparent. And so they review all the cases along with the officers. So there are officers on those disciplinary review boards, there are civilians from the outside, and my supervisors. And they make a recommendation to me. I'm zero tolerant for violating people's constitutional rights or their civil rights.
Well, I know that many of the viewers have seen you out after Hurricane Harvey and other storms that we've had, and you're moving boats and things of that nature. Part of that, I think you were part of the people who've been affected, but I've actually seen you in the community trying to assist others. What policy are you enforcing at that moment, and is that what you consider part of your duty?
I consider that part of my duty, and that goes back to what I say about true community service, being a community servant. We are public servants as police officers. When I talk about true community policing, I think that's our job. That's my job. That's every one of my law enforcement officers' job. We take an oath to protect and serve, and so that's part of it. Not just riding around finding people to put in jail, okay? And so when I tell my guys, if people need your help, I want you to help them. And during storms or emergency situations, sometimes we have to violate some policies to help people, but I still think that's the most important thing.
When you stay involved in the community, and I know this was kind of, again, part of your push when you were running for office, do you have people that you run into that, while they created some issues, for instance, trespass, do you find that their issues are really not of criminal intent as it is more of a mental problem?
Yes.
And so how do you address that?
Since I've become sheriff, I have a 24-hour, I've gone to the commissioner's court and got them to approve a 24-hour mental health physician at our place, at my correctional facility. We are doing, evaluations. We are trying to find resources for folks who are homeless, because even, lots of law enforcement officers, municipal police departments, they don't know what to do with folks. And so they end up in our correctional facility because there's no beds, there's no place to take them. And so I've hired...
So walk me through that when you say there's no beds. So what happens to the guy who's homeless, they don't have anywhere to go, they're picked up by a city police officer?
So the city police officer may charge them with trespassing,
okay,
which is a misdemeanor offense. So they'll come to our jail. Immediately they'll be screened for any mental health diagnosis, and that's a large majority of the folks who come to our facility. Once that happens, I will, under my leadership now, they get assigned a discharge planner, someone who follows them through the process. We determine if they're still on their medication, if they've ever been on medication, if they are off. At the cost of taxpayers, we put them back on their meds and try to get them out of crisis. I'll put a mental health, well, we called it a hold. So if they're in crisis, once they've done their misdemeanor time, which usually is for trespassing is not very long, they'll stay in our jail a couple of days. And then I will get them transported over to the mental health facility to be screened.
And you say this just started under your administration?
Yes.
How is this getting paid for?
I went to the county commissioner's court and asked, I have a medical contract. And so when I got elected, I was looking at how much it was costing us to pay for off-site medical care. People come to jail, and most people, taxpayers, don't understand. When your cousin comes to jail, and if they have any medical conditions or mental health conditions, guess what? I got to take them to the hospital, and we all know how much it costs to go to the emergency room. So I went to the commissioner's court after getting some bids from some medical contractors across the state, saying, look, I think I can do this cheaper if we can do some stuff in-house. One of the things that I'm doing in-house is detoxing folks. We didn't do that before I got there. So they would have to, if Beaumont PD arrested somebody and brought them to my facility, we'd have to take them somewhere and get them detoxed at the cost of the taxpayer. So I've hired under my medical contract someone who a medical staff who we can detox. We can screen them for certain drugs and make the determination that we can keep them rather than spending the next couple of nights, in the hospital. We have psychiatrists and psychologists, and so all that's taxpayers' dollars. But if we do it under our medical contract, it's cheaper than going again to emergency room or to hospitals.
Well, it brings me kind of to that final area, which is power. Obviously, you've talked a lot about the various number of employees you have and things of that nature. But what's your budget?
I have a $42 million budget, and so that takes care of salaries. The largest portion of it is salaries, of course, operating expenses, medical contracts. I have to buy police cars and equipment, and police equipment is very expensive. When you talk about tasers and, our vest, to keep our officers safe, the average vest costs about $800 a vest. And so when you consider every police officer has to have one. And so it's an expensive endeavor. It's a necessary endeavor, though. And it's offset, again, by grants, by me generating revenue. My budget would be so much more expensive when you think in terms of how much money that we save or that we give back. I don't have to buy police cars with seized funds, but I do that because I think that's the right thing to do.
Well, I guess that's my question. When you say a $42 million budget, does that include the money that you actually create as your own revenue, or is that additional $42 million plus what you create?
$42 million plus what I create, because we never know. It fluctuates, and again, my commissary budget is 600% more. Generating 600% more than it did before I became sheriff.
Ballpark me. What are we talking about when we say over 600% increase? Increase of what? What are we talking about number-wise?
Right now, we're sitting at about $500,000, and I've got some plans to, increase it. But what I do with that money, I've just bought some software that will benefit my corrections officers under some of the new legislative mandates, Sandra Bland Act. The officers have to walk around and make sure that they check and look in the cells to make sure that all the folks that are suicidal, we check them every 15 minutes. So I brought some software where when they walk by the cells, it'll scan. They can't, part of what's happening in the country, people were dying because people were kind of fudging on that. And so I bought some stuff to make sure that they can't fudge, that we're really checking. It's got some, it's technology.
With this budget that you have, and you say most of it is towards salary, how do you keep the good qualified officers in Jefferson County?
It's tough, especially on the corrections side. Law enforcement side, the people, they go to a police academy, and the training is so much better, I think. And so what I'm trying to do now is provide I think more opportunities for the folks who work in corrections. We offer a correctional academy. I think in the law enforcement arena, corrections for so many years has kind of been, nobody gives them credit. That's a hard job. Working in a jail, taking care of people who don't want to be there. The majority of those people who are suffering from, some mental illness, what we kind of talked about, medical conditions, and other dysfunctions. I didn't come from a corrections background. I came from a law enforcement background. And so I'm forced now to spend a lot of time out there, and I've learned a whole lot about it, and I have so much respect for them. But what they've lacked here in Jefferson County for a lot of years is training. In the past, you didn't need anything other than a high school diploma. And so I'm kind of raising that bar. Because my expectations are that we are professionals. When you deal with people's loved ones, I know if you were dealing with somebody I cared about, and we all have family and friends that may end up in that jail. And so I want you to be a professional when you deal with somebody that I care about. And I want them to treat everybody in that jail like somebody loves them.
Someone asked me, what would you say to a James Payne that's 18 that says, hey, I want to become where you are? So I guess I throw that question back to you. You've got some young lady getting ready to graduate from high school, a young man's getting ready to graduate from high school and says, hey, I want to be where Sheriff Zena is. What would you say to them?
Education. I think that's, I didn't know that I was going to be where I am. That was never my dream. And sometimes I think God puts you where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. But I tell anyone that I think it's important for you to educate yourself. If you truly care about law enforcement, then I think you have to have a certain amount of compassion for people. You have to have the ability to communicate and listen to what people are telling you, because everybody that ends up in the correctional facility or that breaks the law are not criminals. They're not bad people. If you're going to go into a true law enforcement background, I would suggest you hire on at some municipal police department and get your feet wet and figure out if you really have the stomach for that. Because every day is not easy. The fun part of it is no day is like the day before, and I think that's what I enjoyed early in my career. Now I don't get that so much. It's a lot of administrative stuff, but I like fixing things, and so I think you just got to want to make a difference.
Well, you mentioned starting early in your career, and I'm not going to tell you how I got this picture.
Oh my God!
But why don't you take a look at this, and we'll let the viewers take a look at it. Tell us what we're looking at here.
A baby. So this was early in my career, and I was in the public relations division, and we were doing summer programs with the kids. Yeah.
I guess my next thing, my final thing I really want to ask you, what does a sheriff do for fun?
I'm a very social person. I'm a avid sports fan, so I root for football teams, basketball teams. My daughter's husband played for the Washington Nationals, so we got to celebrate the World Series. That was fun. I'm normally an Astros fan.
Okay.
I love to read.
Okay.
I don't know. I like making a difference in people's lives. I love family time, spending time with my daughter. I love to travel. I'm just a regular person.
Well, I enjoyed having you here. I look forward to seeing you continue to do the great things you're doing in Southeast Texas. And thank you again for coming and sharing with us.
Thanks for being interested enough and getting the message out to our community about what sheriffs do.